Havoc.
News, interviews, and more.
We just reek of Huntsville Havoc hockey.
The Reekin Havoc podcast is back with a little different take this time around. We feature Mike Williams of Underboss Photography for our In the Slot segment. Coach Stu Steffen highlights another player for the Pick of the Pack feature. We'll bring you another of Huntsville's greatest hits and get caught up on the latest results and team news. Keep it here. The Reekin Havoc podcast will return.
The Reekin Havoc podcast.
One of the worst feelings you can have is that of being stranded. Well, BT's Towing, Tire, and Truck Repair makes that a thing of the past, with 24/7 towing services and roadside assistance in the northern Alabama and southern Tennessee areas. But that's not all. They also offer truck and trailer repair, mobile welding, brake service and repair, new and used tires, and other major and minor repairs. Their name says it all, BT's Towing, Tire, and Truck Repair. For 24/7 response, call 497-8234. That's 497-8234. BT's Towing, Tire, and Truck Repair. Got something to say? Put it on a t-shirt, or hoodie, or apron, or even an iPhone case. Just go to daddyoscustomtees.com and make it happen. Look through their selection of ready-made designs, or make one of your own. Check out their special hockey designs, too. With Daddy O's Custom Tees, you can truly have it your way. Look for Daddy O's Custom Tees on Facebook, follow them on Twitter or Instagram, or go online to daddyoscustomtees.com. That's DADDYOS Custom TEES.com. Daddy O's Custom Tees. They've got your back or front.
Let's go in the slot.
Welcome back, hockey fans, to another In the Slot chat. This week, we are bringing you down on the ice in a unique fashion for a unique look at the Havoc. We have Mike Williams with Underboss Photography here to share all about photographing the Havoc, what that looks like, and kind of give us an idea of what he does behind the scenes and behind that camera. So, Mike, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Much obliged. It's great to be here.
Yes. So tell us how the hockey season has started. We're in the crux of it. How has that experience been like for you so far this season?
It's been great. I've been able to do a little traveling with the team already. Went down to Birmingham and Pensacola for the opening weekend and just getting in the groove, kind of getting back in the swing of things. Typically during the summer, I take some time off and kind of relax. And this summer was like that until football season kicked off. And then before I knew it, hockey season was here and I was ready to go.
So do you get to travel with the hockey team a lot? Is that something that you get to ride the bus down there with them, or are you having to travel by yourself? How's that work?
So typically for me, I travel with family. I don't travel by myself. Wife and daughter typically go with me. I don't do the bus rides typically because I'm not a Havoc staff member. Because of legality reasons and all the fun stuff that goes with that. Not that I haven't asked. I would absolutely love to, just to document,
I'm about to say, what an awesome documentation of just bus life in general.
Oh, of course. I would absolutely love to, but, with the given situations, I understand from their perspective. So, it's all good.
So that in mind, tell us a little bit about who you are. We see you share pictures on social media. You're in the different Facebook groups talking about your photography and sharing your shots. I think I've even seen some really cool shots of you way up in the rafters. It's really kind of neat. How in the world did you get acquainted and start working and taking pictures with the Havoc?
So a good buddy of mine, he plays some beer league down at the Iceplex. And, I told him when I started photography back in 2019 that I really would love to come out and shoot hockey. Been a hockey fan for many, many, many years. And when I started in doing photography in general, I really wanted to get into sports and concerts as my main go-tos. Quickly learned that I was not set up for that from an equipment standpoint, from a knowledge standpoint, just wasn't ready. Spent a couple of years learning the camera, learning sports in general, doing portrait shoots and stuff like that to build up the money so I could get the right equipment to be able to come out and do, sports like that. Went and did a couple of beer league games. The guys loved the photos that I did. They invited me to do the Havoc Amateur Hockey League championship game at the BBC. And I kind of nonchalantly, if you will, posted, maybe I'll get called up to the big leagues one day. And a week later, the social media manager, Lucas, reached out to me and said, "Hey, we'd love to have you come out for a game, test the water, see how it is." Went did my first game and absolutely fell in love. Going into the second season, that was towards the end of the 2021 or 2020, 2021 season. So there really wasn't, it was like April or late March when I got in. So obviously there wasn't a lot of hockey left. Got asked and invited to come back the second season, and was really kind of supposed to be a backup, but ended up, taking on a bigger role due to some personnel shifts within the organization as far as the photographers on the team or that work with the team. And before I knew it, I was Lucas considers me the head photographer for the team. We do the media day. I do walk-ins. I'm generally at the arena by 4 at the latest for player walk-ins and don't leave until normally one of the last people walking out of the arena.
So you've only really been dabbling into this whole photography field since 2019. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. So, as a kid, I had a camera, just to point and shoot. My dad had a Nikon that he used for film and stuff like that, but I never really spent a lot of time in it and, kind of got to understand the story behind how I got into photography. Was my daughter was in band a couple years ago, and she was in marching band. I wanted to be able to take some pictures because that was one thing I never saw was everybody's always doing the football, but nobody's doing the marching band. So I bought a cheap DSLR camera, was able to take some pictures of her, threw it in the cabinet and never really thought much about it. Well, she come home from school one day and was showing me stuff that they were doing. Picked the camera back up and then really truly started to learn how to use a camera. And I know that sounds kind of cliche, but truly understanding the different modes and how you can manipulate and do things that, if you're on just a standard automatic mode, you can't do.
Yeah. And people who have never worked with a DSLR don't realize that. I think that was a shock. It wasn't necessarily a shocker when I was learning these things in college, but I can remember starting some photography classes in my journalism program and learning that, all those really cool shots, those really neat portrait shots, those really good sports shots, that is not something that somebody's just picking up and shooting. There's a lot of prep work in understanding that device. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, that there's a skill level to it.
Most definitely. I would 100% agree to that.
So 5 years, you've really just kind of picked this up. What did you find has been kind of the more difficult part of really learning that the camera? And I say that because, again, it's so technical and there's so many specific things you have to aperture, ISO, the light, all of those things. And a lot of people just, don't realize that. So what has been kind of like a hard area for you to really master that you're getting better at?
Probably portraits. And I know that sounds really bad because I do a lot of portraits. Lighting has been a big thing too, just, doing additional lighting, strobes and flashes and things like that. It's just an area that I know enough to be dangerous and I can do it and I love doing it. Matter of fact, I've done some of the hockey family out there that sits in the arena with us on every weekend. But that's probably been the hardest thing because I very much take pride in my photography and I don't want to be the standard average person out there with a camera and they go take the same cliche photos. And I tell people when I do portraits, I want to, especially if I'm doing a family, I want to see the family aspect. I want to see them having fun. I want to see them cutting up. If they're a serious family, be serious. But if you're a goofy family, be goofy in front of the camera because those are the photos you're going to cherish. And trying to capture that and make sure that, I've got the settings right and making sure that I'm exposing correctly. And then even the editing piece of it, that's really where I've struggled for a lot of years, the editing, because everybody's a little different. Some people want a little of this, a little of that, and being diverse and being able to present different aspects and different views and ways to show it. That's kind of what I drive to.
Well, I was going to ask that too. I think a lot of people also, they realize like there's this, and I do a lot of wedding photography and there's always the editing process, right? There's always the part of fixing things and making pictures brighter, darker, whatever it may be. But it takes a lot of time and there's a lot of prep work that goes into that. Shooting the picture may take 2 seconds, but the work that goes into bringing it really to life, there's a lot to it. Do you spend a lot of time after the hockey games with your pictures? Are they do you have to do a lot of that editing and color correction and stuff, or are they pretty raw, what we see?
So most of mine for the hockey, they are definitely not raw. So I developed a preset, probably early 2023, 2024 season that really brought out the reds and did all the color correction ready to go, because we're in the same arena. We're in the same lighting every week. Nothing really changes. It's, I know exactly how my camera settings need to be unless I'm doing something really oddball, doing a long exposure, chasing a player or something like that. So my settings are the same. I do the same preset unless I see something that I just really love that I want to tweak and go black and white or put kind of a cinematic edit on it. I did one a couple of weeks ago where it was a triple exposure and went completely off the rails from your standard hockey or sports preset with the white colors and everything else, and went super cinematic with it, changed it up. And that's kind of one of the things I'm trying to do this year, is to bring in some different aspects into sports photography, because everybody gives the same basic standard, cropped in shot. This is what you're going to get. Here's the color. Here's white ice. And you walk down the road. And that's the one thing I've noticed, especially like sports portraits. There's a couple of guys in the game right now that are completely revolutionizing how sports portraits are done. And it is just mind blowing what they're able to accomplish. And I'm kind of trying to do that from the in-game aspect rather than rewriting the book in sports portraits.
And it takes a lot of work too, off the ice, in a theory,
100%.
like a ton of hours to perfect it. I think one of the things that I've always learned, even with my photography work, is that sometimes I get the shot and sometimes I don't get the shot. And I feel like I go back on the shots that I couldn't get. Like, what did I do wrong? How to do? And there was a lot of prep work for me to go in and kind of figure how to make myself a better photographer in that. So I think it's something that we all grapple with to some extent.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I'm curious too, what kind of what was your experience like those first few games compared to now? I mean, do you feel a lot more comfortable when you're out there now than you did before? Do you still have like some hesitancies about being in certain places to get certain shots? Like how has that kind of changed for you?
So the best way to explain the first probably 2 or 3 games was bubble guts. I had absolute bubble guts, and it was more of, there was no pressure from the team. There's no pressure from Lucas with the media team. Like, if you get something great, if you don't, it is what it is. Because he knew, shooting a beer league game, even to a Havoc game, although they're not, quote unquote NHL level, there's still a dramatic difference. There's a speed difference. There's a skill level difference. And the pace of the game is dramatically different. But that first 2 or 3 games, I ran around like a chick with my head cut off because I didn't think I knew what I was doing, especially seeing some of the other guys that have been around the arena for a while. I was kind of a third man in, and kind of nobody really wanted to talk to me, like, who is this new guy kind of thing. And mad respect to the guys that I work with now, Chris and some of the other folks. But it was really awkward for me because I didn't really have a portfolio that was full of sports photography and stuff like that. So coming in, it was, well, who's this guy? Well, he's just some random kid off the street who just happens to take beer league photos. And it's kind of turned, kind of revolutionized how I look at things too, from an aspect of just because you're new doesn't mean you can't do the right thing and get the right shot. Because that first season, if you remember Hunter Vorva, you kind of mentioned earlier in the text message about shots that I remember that stick out to me. This one was when Hunter Vorva was named goalie of the year for the 2020-2021 season. The photo that they used was one of mine. And I was just like I borderline cried because I was like, oh my goodness, one of my photos is being used to announce a professional player's season year award. And it was like, oh my goodness, I guess I can't really do this. But then show up to the next game and it's like I hit, missed shots, and my settings were wrong and my editing was off, and I was having some camera issues, and it was just like a complete letdown after that, not realizing that I was still perfectly fine. I just needed to tweak something. And that's just really kind of now, like I said earlier, I know exactly what my settings need to be if I'm standing on the bench, if I'm on the glass in the media hole, if I'm in the rafters, if I'm on the concourse, wherever I'm at in that arena, I know exactly what my settings need to be. So much so that I don't even have I used to have a card that I wrote down what I used in what area to make sure if I needed that or tweak it. I don't even have the card anymore. Like, I think I've got it stored in my box of photography goodies somewhere because I already know it. It's ingrained.
I think that's something that all of us as photographers do. We become ingrained to what we know works best in our setting. I know that, like for me, especially with weddings, I know exactly when I walk into a church, oh, this is what I know I'm going to have for lighting purposes or whatever it might be. Or when the sun's blown everything out, right? And you can't see the sun or you can't see anything, everything's washed out, what you got to quickly turn those things to. So speaking of your equipment, what is your standard equipment? Like, what are you carrying around during the game? What are you using?
So I'm typically right now I'm running on a single body. I'm using a Nikon Z7 mirrorless camera with an adapted F mount Tamron 70-200. Fortunately, I've had good enough luck that body's done me very well. I'm working on trying to get upgraded to, the Nikon Z8, which has got a higher frames per second, and into the Nikon 70-200 glass, just because it just seems to work better. But right now it's just not in the cards, just from a money standpoint, financially in the business. I'm doing well, not doing great, kind of thing. Occasionally some people see me running around with a little GoPro style camera on top, and I use the Insta360 for POV perspectives for me, just for social media reels. And because that's the big game now, you got to have a reel. If you ain't doing reels, you ain't doing social media. Right, it seems like.
Right.
This past weekend, I actually rented a 360 cam and just posted a video on Instagram and Facebook of me in the rafters with that 360 cam. And it was a super cool perspective. So I ended up going and buying like a two level down 360 cam that's actually going to be here tomorrow. So I'll actually be able to use it tomorrow night, hopefully, if I can get it charged up quick enough. Outside of that, that's pretty much it. Occasionally I'll strap on some wide angles if I'm going in the rafters for crowd shots and stuff like that. But my general baseline is going to be that Z7 and my 70-200.
That's what I was going to ask, is what that that lens was that you were using. Okay, so then where you're located during the game, you've put up a bunch of different places. What is a game like for you? Are you always in the rafters? Are you walking around the arena? Are you down in the in the box area? Like, exactly where are you at?
So every game's a little different. It depends on how many folks we've got with us for the night. So typically, if we have what I would consider a full staff, I will go and I will stand on the bench. They'll put me in a little stool in the corner. That way I can get that bench perspective, get some bench shots of the guys reacting, that, in between plays when they're coming to the bench for, sorry, that was rough. Coming to the bench for line changes and stuff like that.
Right.
Some nights I will go down and do the media hole, just because like our other main guy that's always here that does a lot of the games, he's normally at the media hole because that's kind of been his spot. If I'm not there, I'm walking the concourse on the 200 level. The nights where we do have a good full staff, I will go into the rafters. It just kind of depends on the game. If it's a good game, I'll go up and just hang out. And like literally this past Friday night when we were, scored 3 goals in the second period, I just stayed up there the rest of the night because there was no reason to come down because nothing else was needed down on the ice level, which was great because I love being up there. That's by far the coolest perspective of the game you'll ever see.
And are you not terrified being up that high and everything?
No, I'm a little insane that way, I guess you could say, and maybe even a little psycho if you want to go that direction. I found a couple of great spots that I can, like there's one in particular down over the shooting twice side where I can actually sit down and I'm not standing the entire game, and I can just like literally lean right over. This year I have to wear a harness. Last year I actually got told I couldn't go back up because I didn't have any safety rigging.
Yeah, we don't need you falling during the middle of a game. I mean,
well, and it's funny because I've had a lot of people ask me that the railing up there is actually really good. It's an OSHA standard rated railing up there. I have no fear of falling. The only thing I fear is something falling off my camera or me dropping something.
That would be terrible.
Yes, that would be absolutely. I would be absolutely fried. I'd probably just go ahead and jump and be done with it, and just let it be done.
Oh, that's funny. Well, I mean, and also from a hurting somebody's standpoint, that equipment is, people don't realize that's so expensive. I shoot with the Canon 5D, and I'm always wanting to upgrade my equipment and get big different lenses. And it's just like, I just protect the camera that I have because it is so expensive to invest. It's a good investment. And I feel like photography can be a good return on investment, especially if you're really good at taking the pictures, but it's a lot of money to invest in it. And stuff.
It is.
What's a game day for you? You said you're there very early and that you're there probably till it ends, and you're always, taking pictures from when they get there. So how does a game day look for you, especially at the Von Braun?
So if we're at home, normal day, I normally show up about 3:30, go down to the media room, unpack my bag. I generally take my laptop so that we can transfer files and stuff like that with the media team. Make sure I've got all my batteries, while I'm at home and getting my batteries charged. Matter of fact, I've got them on charge for tomorrow night. Just getting all my stuff together, making sure I've got everything possible that I think I might need. I typically overtake. I typically carry, on a typical game day, I've got a 20 millimeter wide angle, 85 millimeter for walk-ins. Occasionally I'll drop on a 50 just for crowd walking. My 70 to 200, batteries galore, memory cards galore, a memory card transfer device so I can move the images from the card to the computer, and all the other things in between, cords and everything else. But normally there by 3:30 or so, getting my stuff set up, ready in the media room. About 4:00, I'm standing in the skate lobby waiting on the players to arrive. That's always a fun, very intriguing time frame because you never know what a player is going to walk in, especially if we're doing a theme night. I know Killer last year walked in full Harry Potter garb. It was great. It was hilarious. We've had folks walk in NASA gear and everything else in between, depending on the different nights. From about 5:00 or so, which is when walk-ins end, because all players are required to report by 5. I go back to the media room, give Lucas the card so he can pull down any walk-ins that he wants to do for social media. I'm normally scarfing something down, making sure I've got all my stuff ready for the night. If we're short on staff, I'll go out and get media crowds of people coming in, kind of getting my head right. About 6:30-ish is when they do warm-ups. I'll go out if I'm needed on the bench. If not, I'll go out and grab crowd shots or whatever's in between. And then face-off or getting ready for face-off puck drop, I'm normally out on the ice doing the photos of the players coming in during introduction, grabbing anything from the anthem singer and the flag folks that are out there.
You are everywhere. See, I didn't realize that you were doing all of that too. So that's interesting.
Yes, I'm. And then even once we're done with puck drop, I'm headed to the bench or headed to my spot, wherever I'm standing for the night, and I'm firing away. Here we go. Intermissions, we go drop cards, letting Lucas give what he picked up for the first period, second period, third period, same thing all the way through. End of the night, we do a final dump of all the photos for the night. I pack my stuff up and I slowly make my parade to the car because my feet are killing me by that point.
You mentioned that sometimes you're on the bench. Tell us about what that's like to be almost like you're in the moment because you've got to be active and catch the shot, but then there's also a lot of other crap going on in that bench where you're at. How does that life and that look?
That is probably the most intriguing spot in the entire arena outside the rafters. Because you'll get a lot of the back and forth between the players, between the teams. Last year, David Thompson had probably one of the best chirps I've ever heard in my life. I recorded the audio for it. Actually, I recorded the video for it on my little Insta GoPro style camera. And it was probably one of the funniest moments that I have ever seen. He was chirping Gulka, Gulka from Pensacola last year. And as much as I would love to repeat it, I cannot. But it was probably one of the funniest moments I've ever witnessed on the bench. That and when Reggie decided he needed to toss or soak down Gulka in the same game with a water bottle, and then water bottle started getting tossed back and forth, and it was quite entertaining.
And I'm sure that there's some entertainment from the coaches too that you get to hear that we don't, get to see as well.
I try and keep my ears closed when the coaches are talking because there's things that come out of his mouth that are very entertaining, and they get the players motivated. I'll say it that way.
Oh, I can only imagine what that's like. And I'm sure that is just an interesting adrenaline run in that box setting because like you have to be aware of what's going on the ice, but then you've also got to be aware of who's coming in and out of that box to make sure you're not in the way. And so when I would photograph sideline football games, I'd be on the sideline and I would be in the moment of photographing something. And I always felt like I had to be aware of those two areas. So the one, I was catching what was on the field, but then also the second one of that I wasn't in the way. And that was my biggest fear when I would do sports photography, was that I was always in the way or wasn't in the right place where I needed to be or something.
Yeah. My biggest fear on the bench is getting hit by a puck. Either that or the inerrant stick coming close to my head, because it hasn't gotten super close, but I have been tapped a couple times on the lens with it. Nothing major. Yeah. That's always my biggest fear, is the puck. And actually, I guess it was the first game of the season we had one enter the bench, and it dinged off the edge of my camera just enough to let me know it was there, but it didn't hurt anything. It didn't hurt me. It didn't even startle me. But it was just one of those where, like, I felt it before I saw it, and by then it was just entirely too late for me to have even tried to react to it. But it's that being on the bench is such a unique perspective too, because you're seeing the player change. You're seeing who's going on, who's coming off. You're hearing what they're saying amongst themselves in regards to, hey, pass the puck this way, shoot it over here. Here's a weak side for the goalie. Here, the weak side on their D is over here. Little things like that that you see and hear. And a lot of the facial expressions is probably some of the best facial expressions I've ever seen is on the bench, because they're coming back. They've just scored a goal. They're the entire team is in an uproar. They're all cheesing ear to ear. Just being able to be a part of that and, to a point, be considered a part of the team, because even as they're coming off, I'm giving them fist bumps, telling them great period, whatever the case may be. And it's just, a lot of them, I've even had guys stop me after the period as they've gotten off the bench and go, hey, did you get that shot? And I'll show them because I've got it marked in camera and I can scroll to it quick. I'm like, yeah, let's go. And they get so behind seeing their images, even sometimes in game, that it's insane to me.
It's an interesting motivator too, an instant motivation too.
Yes.
For them, because the fruit of their labor, right, is you can see it. It's not just a passing glimpse that somebody now has to recall in internal memory. You've done the job of capturing that in physical memory. And I think that's something unique that's like a unique thing that sports photography or photography of any kind really brings to a profession that people may not realize. It's good to have the photo, but there's something for those players. It's that instant gratification, instant understanding of that.
We'll be back with more of the Reekin Havoc podcast.
Time now for the Huntsville Havoc Pick of the Pack, a weekly spotlight.
Head coach Stuart Steffen.
Buster Larson, number 74, back for another year here. Excited to have him back. Was a guy who came in last year, played about probably just over half the year for us, and ended up being, over a point a game player for us. It was kind of near the top of our scoring. Guy we're really excited about to have around all year. Was a really key part of last year's team, so excited to have him back. And he's got off to a pretty good start here again this year. Kind of did some different line mates this year with a couple guys leaving and stuff like that. And I think he's got off to a solid start for us. I think he's got a couple goals there last weekend too. So again, kind of picking up where he left off last year. And, we're excited moving forward here, hopefully for him to keep developing and become a real offensive threat for our team here throughout the entire season. So really excited for, Buster this season, and hopefully being with our team the entire year really helps him kind of take off this year to be even more of a dominant presence in the league.
The Reekin Havoc podcast will be right back.
My name is Joel, and I came to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital in December of 1987 to be treated for osteosarcoma, which is bone cancer. We didn't know anything about St. Jude. We didn't know what they meant, or that, when we got here, what we would do, how it would be taken care of. And when we arrived, we found out that my family wasn't going to have to pay for any of my treatment, not for my medicine, not for travel, not for housing, not for food. St. Jude was going to cover all that. St. Jude supported me in every way, from, taking that financial burden off my parents to making sure that all of my family was included in this time. St. Jude literally means everything to me. I get to go home to my family tonight. I get to cook dinner for them. That's what you're giving. You are giving us everything by supporting St. Jude. So thank you so much.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Want to howl with the Havoc this season? Now's your chance from Applebee's Tailgate Talk and the Reekin Havoc podcast. Just go to ReekinHavoc.com and click on Howl with the Havoc to register, then listen to Tailgate Talk on Saturday mornings as we announce the winners of Huntsville Havoc tickets. Howl with the Havoc this season from the Huntsville Havoc, Tailgate Talk, and the Reekin Havoc podcast.
This is Tyler Piacentini, and you are listening to the Reekin Havoc podcast.
We talked earlier, I asked you, some important photo moments, and you mentioned the one of Vorva. Do you have any other things that maybe you were like, I can't believe I got that on camera? Like, what are some of those things that you recall?
So last year, Reggie had a fight in Birmingham. It was about middle of the season. And this was when, he had the hair flowing. It was a little bit longer. And there was a shot of him. He had the player. I didn't get to see his face, which is, that if you hear the old cliche, if you're not seeing the face, it's not really a good sports photo. Well, this one, it generated more likes and comments on social media than some of the other photos, some of the what I would consider cliched best photos I've ever taken. Just because he's rearing back with one fist, his hair's flowing like it's in the wind, and he's ready to just lay down a monster punch on a guy. I had a couple last year of the goalies. There was even one, and I know there's some Havoc fans going to be upset with me saying this, but Rodenbush, I captured one of him last year he was spread out, spread eagle, making a spectacular save. And I sent it to him, and even his mother commented and wanted me to send her the raw file so that she could get it printed for him for his man cave. But there's been so many that I look back, even this past weekend, Yannick on Space Night doing the jump into the boards. Like, it was one of those, I'll shoot anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 photos on a given night. So I'm constantly, I feel like my fingers on the trigger the entire time, it seems like. But, getting home and actually getting to see the photos on a bigger screen, there's been ones that I'm just like, how in the world did I manage to catch that? There was one last year that I had printed for Fisher that he had scored a goal. When I saw the original photo, the bench is reacting. He's got his arms up. He's reacting on the ice. And I left it as a wide angle photo, not realizing that when I got it printed, like I printed up on canvas for myself for my man cave, when I looked at the photo and got it in person and saw it bigger, the puck was actually still in the net. And I was just, because you could see it right through the goalie's legs. And it was just that perfect moment where I was like, okay, how did everything align correctly for me to be able to get that shot? Last year I set a goal for myself that I wanted to catch one where you could see the puck in the net, like from a side view. So the player's finishing the shot, the puck is in the back of the net and pushing the net out, because that's one that I've seen circulating around the NHL thousands of times, but I've never been able to do it myself. And I got it actually 2 or 3 separate times last year. But there's just been, I don't even know that I could put a particular one. I guess personally, because of Reggie, him being on the cup this year, the souvenir cup, both of those photos are my photos. And like I certainly, when I saw him, Lucas and them show them preseason, I was like, okay, I got to find that cup. And I had to go like 3 games before I could find one of the concession stands that actually had one. So I guess those are probably my most treasured ones, if you will, just simply because it's kind of immortalized on a cup, as cheesy as that may sound.
No, I mean, what was the old saying you always heard? If you make it on the cover of the Rolling Stone, you've made it. I think that was the old adage. And so, I mean, the same thing is here. There's things within that as a photographer and someone doing it as a hobby, right? This is something we pick up as a hobby, something we love. We're like, oh, we're pretty good at it. It's kind of a lot of fun. It may not pay the bills, but it's something that we enjoy doing. And then you find yourself kind of immortalized in that sense, where something you have created now brings more joy, not just to you, but to other people. And it's shared and it's used and it becomes a part of something. I don't think there's anything wrong with feeling that. I would be elated to know that 100%.
Yeah, it was just one of those where, because like I actually got to see the preview during the summer with Lucas, because he showed it to me because he was needing the raw image of one of the files to be able to blow it up and do some tweaking to it. And he showed it to me over the summer, and I was like, oh my goodness, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I cannot believe those photos are going to go on a cup. I'm here for it 100%. I love every second of it, but it's like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that's going to end up on a souvenir.
That's awesome. So what's your goal for this year? What's your photo goal?
This year, I really don't have one other than traveling more with the team. Last year we got to do Birmingham and Knoxville. This year we've already accomplished Birmingham and Pensacola. We're really trying to set out and do all of the arenas in the season. This year is not going to be in the cards just because life's a little bit busy right now on the home front and the day job perspective. But we do have a trip planned for Evansville in a couple of weeks. And then in January, we're going to Knoxville again for 2 games because we've got a back-to-back weekend there. And then we're planning on trying to go to Macon in April. I forget. I went to Peoria last year for the championship, but that was kind of a no-brainer. Like I told Lucas, I don't care. I'm going. I'll be there. Just make sure I have a pass, and he made it happen. So this year, obviously, same thing. If we do some, get to the playoffs and we make it to the championship, I'm going to say when we make it to the championship, I'll be there again, regardless. Right. I don't care what happens. I'll be there, even if it is a 10-hour drive to Peoria.
So did you photograph any at the Iceplex too? I
did do the 2 home games at the Iceplex last year, and I love the Iceplex. The lighting is almost identical to what it is at the arena. Yeah. I know that sounds crazy, mainly because the lights are significantly lower. That environment's much more intimate. Yeah. From my perspective, just because there's not a lot of places that I can go in there.
Yeah.
But it works out great because I've shot. That's where I started at. So it's almost kind of like going home to me to a point.
And then shooting at other arenas, how has that experience been so far in terms of finding like the sweet spot? Because your settings at the Von Braun and at the Iceplex, but are you having to refigure and reconfigure stuff when you get into other places? And how are you doing that on the fly when you may not have a lot of time to figure it out?
So Birmingham is pretty easy. Theirs because I've done, 5 or 6, 7 games now down there. I know all the staff. Birmingham is really unique because there's only like 2 or 3 places you can even be. If you're on the glass, it's on either end of the ice. You can do the concourse, which isn't terrible. It's just kind of a really odd perspective, and there's not really a great place to stand without being in somebody's way, because that's the number one thing I want to be is I don't want to be in somebody's way. Pensacola was rough. Luckily, we got in there early enough to where I could shoot warm-up, so I used the warm-up time frame to be able to find the right settings and where was I going to stand and stuff like that. And luckily, we used to live down in Pensacola area, so I'd been to that arena a couple of times. Knoxville, I pretty much got free run in Knoxville to a certain extent because we've become friends with the owner, Robert. Super great guy. I love him to death. When we went down up there last year, he met up with us before the game started, and he's like, hey, you need anything, you give me a call. You stand wherever you want in this arena. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. And I was like, okay. Sounds good to me. Don't
you love those opportunities? I always loved those. You can go anywhere, have fun, that kind of thing.
And it's good for me because, I try not to get too personal with people just because a lot of the time it's, especially like Knoxville's owner, granted, he comes to a lot of the games, so we get to see him quite often. Especially last year, obviously we've only played him once at home this year, but he was just like, hey, here's where the staff food's at. If you're hungry, get some food. If you need something to drink, let me know. I'll make sure you're taken care of. Because and a lot of that's because we reciprocated in Huntsville. I know Tanya had posted the other day that Knoxville, even the Knoxville players said we are the best at taking care of the players, whether it's our homeboys or the guys visiting. We take care of the players, and to be able to get that reciprocation in some of the other arenas has been phenomenal. Pensacola wasn't so much, but that's a different story for a different day.
Fans or just people not letting you go places?
It was getting into the arena was rough. Their staff, I'll be careful saying this, their staff wasn't ready, I guess, for us.
Yeah, I gotcha.
So we didn't have media passes.
Well, you've got have media passes. You got all this equipment coming in, and then there's a communication issue. I get it. Yeah.
Yep. And then even being down, there was a handful of fans that weren't the nicest people in the world, because typically when I go to a game, I'm wearing a Havoc jersey. Whether it's an older or a new one, I'm still typically wearing a jersey. If I'm not, I'm wearing some kind of form of Havoc swag of some sort, whether it's a polo, pullover, hat, something, just because I want to make sure that, I'm not going to dress dull because I'm in somebody else's barn. I'm going to support my boys one way or the other. And I had a couple of fans that were not so nice, a few hand gestures that told me I was number one. A couple of gentlemen that decided that I didn't need to be there, and they told me to pack my stuff and go somewhere else. That was quite entertaining. That was quite hilarious because at the end of the game, we were walking back into the locker room, and several of their fans were leaning over the rails and, kind of taunting the players as they were coming off. And one of our players just turned around and looked at the scoreboard and pointed and walked into the locker room, which was absolutely hilarious. Wish I got that on video, because he didn't say a word. He literally just pointed and turned and went to the locker room. But Pensacola, it wasn't bad. I mean, it's a great arena. It's a big arena. The lighting's pretty decent. It's just staff wise and, getting in was a real pain. Yeah. Especially with how their arena is set up, because we'd parked on the wrong side, so to speak, and had to walk out on a main entrance to an interstate to get to the other side of the arena, which was highly entertaining with 40 pounds worth of camera gear on my back. So,
so are there other SBHL photographers in other places that you've become friends with, or are you kind of
No, most definitely. The main one is going to be Seth in Birmingham. Seth, oh my goodness, I've lost his last name. Seth is a great photographer. I've gleaned a lot of information off of him. He's been doing it for a lot of years, and he is a phenomenal photographer. Eric in Knoxville is a great guy. I bumped into one of the Pensacola photographers, but he actually worked for a media company and not directly for the team. He was a super nice guy, but it was a very short, 2-minute interaction, and I was back to my head in the moment of the game. But the other couple of places that I've been, Peoria, I met the guy there very briefly again. He was super nice. But as far as the photographer community at all the arenas, they'll give me some pointers of places that we can stand that we're not going to be in the way, or there's good lighting or good perspectives. But for the most part, I haven't had any. Birmingham is by far the best. Seth I can't speak highly enough of him. He is a great guy. And it's funny because even when we're in town, and even if I'm there, he's still shooting shots of our guys, and he will get them to Lucas. And Lucas has used quite a few of them before, because he's just and I told Lucas, I have no heartburn at all with you using his images, because he is absolutely amazing.
I think that's what kind of sets the photography community apart. And I can recall this being at college football games where I was at a bowl game or a championship game or something. And then you'd have these media rooms, and we would all be in there trying to get the shot. We'd all be in there trying to get the thing. But we were all just it was like a community, and we were all there to help each other. And I can remember people needing extra batteries and needing chargers, and they needed an extra light or something. And it was just such a welcoming, we're all trying to get the shot. We're all trying to get our own stuff, but we're all kind of there for everyone. And that translated so much in my college years. And it's really nice to hear that kind of still translates through the profession.
So I will say this, it is in certain sports, but not all.
Yeah.
And the only reason I say that is because I did have a run-in with a local guy here in Huntsville at a local high school game that he basically told me that I was on the wrong field and I needed to go back to where I was. And
of course,
it's a guy that he's had run on the community for a lot of years. Everybody goes to him. That's who does a lot of senior portraits, and that's him. And I've heard stories of him being that way with other photographers, because I had done some media day stuff with a local school, and he flat out told me that wasn't my place and I needed to go somewhere else with that. And I very eloquently told him that I was contracted by a parent, not by the school. And he proceeded to tell me that he had a sole contract with the school system. And I said, well, first off, in the school system, you can't have a sole contract because that's not how it works. You've just been in the game long enough that you are getting to do it. And I said, it's only a matter of time before you get knocked off your pedestal. I was very nice about it, but he flat out told me, like, I walked away from him just simply because I didn't want to have that confrontation on the field. And I gave him my card, my cell number, and I said, if we want to have a further conversation about this, we can, or we're not going to do it here.
Yeah. There are always a few bad apples. I can recall some of those as well, but I always felt like I had a pretty good set. It sounds like, too, with some of the relationships you're making in the hockey world, that you've made some really good connections with people. So that's always a positive thing. Okay, so when you are not being Underboss photography on the ice, what are you doing? What is your life like?
I am working for a government contractor and a parent of a daughter who is 16 and a daughter who is 22 in college.
And have either of your daughters picked up photography as like a hobby, or is this a sole you thing?
So my oldest daughter, she was the one that got me into it. She does do a little bit in college. She's actually she's actually doing an integrated marketing communications degree down at West Alabama. And so some of the stuff she learned in high school that she taught me how to do is translating for her. She's doing a lot more of the social media management, which I've already told her I'll hire in a couple of years when she gets done, because I'm not great at social media and I don't have time to keep up on the trends. My youngest daughter definitely wants to do the same. Matter of fact, she's already told several people that as soon as I upgrade my current camera, she's getting it and she's going to be able to use my gear,
right?
Which I'm 100% okay with. She's come out and shot some basketball with me when I worked with a team a couple of years ago, which was great. She had a blast. She had a great time. She was getting some good shots, which was great. I did a lot of the settings for her, and all I had to do was hand her the camera and tell her how to focus.
Yeah.
And so she did a great job with it. She had a lot of fun doing it. So, I think she will pick it up in the next couple of years, hopefully. And, I told her if you want to do it, the only thing stopping you is you.
Mm-hmm. Hey, and I think to your statement of, well, I just handed it to her, it was all set up. I think one of the hardest things for newbies to learn is how to focus and like make them look through the camera. They want to look at the back. They want to hold it up and point and shoot it. And it's not how you do it. And so I'm like 100% a firm believer. It is set. It is ready. Just look through it and let me teach you how to focus and let me teach you how to frame. If you can learn those basic things to begin with, then learning the settings and learning that lingo and that, I call it the mathematics of using a camera, that all comes later. It's if you can't focus and frame and do all of those things, then you're really going to struggle if you want to be successful in it. And that's my personal opinion. So I think you did a good job on that with her.
And I would agree. I mean, there's you got to have an eye for it, and that's what I tell a lot of people is anybody can pick up a camera and take a picture. But what makes it interesting? What makes that photo a photo and not a snapshot? And if you can, I don't honestly think that's something you can develop. I think you kind of have it. You have that artistic mind, so to speak. And some people you can teach them and they'll look for certain things, but kind of one of my driving things is finding a different angle, looking at it a different way, trying to be different and finding different places to go and stand and angles and, perspectives and whatever else to try and get something that's not your standard average, everyday, generic, basic image.
Yeah, and I think that is some of the stuff that sets people who want to be successful in the photography field apart from people who just that success is not what they want, or they're just not that serious about it. And I think that comes down to that. So, any other advice then that you might give someone who may want to do photography or specifically sports photography?
So I tell everybody that's interested in it, pick up a camera, go down to the Iceplex on pretty much any night of the week and shoot hockey or shoot sports. If you've got friends who are playing a flag football game or, your kids are out there, me being a parent, I tell a lot of parents, you don't have to go buy $5,000 worth of gear just to shoot your kids. You can get the exact same stuff with a little bit of knowledge. And by the way, for anybody curious, I am not a classically trained photographer. I literally have a quote unquote degree from the University of YouTube. Everything I have ever learned about photography has been off of YouTube. But there's so many opportunities out there to learn sports photography more so than portraits or anything else, because most people's kids play it. We've got friends whose kids play it. We've got someone that we know that would love a picture, whether it's good or bad, of their kid. And developing that and learning how to use the camera will come with time. And I can't say it enough. I started in the beer league. I started shooting peewee hockey with a good friend of mine's kid who's a goalie. That's where I started at. I just got lucky, and I say lucky. I put in the work. I put in the effort. I learned how to do it. But in the same respect, I'm also putting myself in situations that will help get me to that next level. And that's kind of, I think, what's taken everything to the next stage for me.
So next adventure, you'll be at the game this weekend for Mighty Havoc Night. So you'll be there, and we'll see you out somewhere on the ice. And I'm assuming getting to as many hockey games as possible that you can make it to this season.
Yep, we are. I am on tap this year to make every home game unless something happens between now and the game. We've got a couple of travel trips going up to some of the different arenas over the next couple of months. And then outside of that, I'm doing all kind of random events locally. And I did the big veterans game this past weekend with some of the local vets. I'm always somewhere. It seems like.
Well, and I think a good photographer is always somewhere. You ask, how do you get that shot? It's because you're in the right moment at the right time. And I'm a firm believer of that when it comes to this.
100%.
100% on that part of it. Well, thank you so much for stopping by, chatting with us, telling us a little bit about what you do. We see your photos all over social media. We see them shared. I love seeing a good picture that you've done shared, and then like all the comments, they're talking that they're reliving the experience they had. And so you give people an opportunity to relive those experiences and enjoy those. So thank you so much for sharing what you do with the Havoc as one of the photographers. So we appreciate that so much. Hockey fans, I hope you've enjoyed this. Maybe pick up a camera, do what Mike says, try something new. You never know what will happen if you don't just try something. So everybody, look for Mike during the games in all of those areas. You might even see him up in the rafters. Who knows? But we're real excited to bring this story to you and hope that you guys have enjoyed it. And as I always say, stay sharp in the slot. Keep reeking of Huntsville Havoc hockey. We will see you next time.
The Reekin Havoc Podcast.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Join us now for Huntsville's Greatest Hits, where current and former players recount their most memorable dropping of the gloves.
Former Havoc defenseman Sam Kanata.
Donnybrook in Huntsville. We must have reached 1 million views on YouTube for that one for sure. I think it was like family night because it was in between Christmas and New Year's, if I'm remembering correctly. And they had a couple guys that we just weren't getting along with throughout the year. And I can't remember if it was Chapin the Blonde Chaps or Corey Fulton got hit into their bench at one point, like through the door, coming up, like he was trying to change. It was in the third because I was at the other end of the bench. And Chaps or Bolts is looking to change, and the bench doors are right by them. And one of their guys, I can't remember his name, he's from New England too, but he checked, it must have been Chaps, into the bench through the open door. And then it kind of just went haywire, and the guys on the ice didn't know what to do. Some guys skated over, and then we all kind of had that moment of realization, like we got to go in there and save them. So you can see me and like Billy Breaks run out, down our bench, out onto the ice, through their open gate to try and, save our teammates. And then it was madness. Kozlowski was swinging his stick at the end there. And Boozer, another one, was, just taking one of their guys to the woodshed out in the middle of the ice. So it was a loud one. I will say one thing that is a little side note there. We had to get on the bus that night, go down to Columbus and play in a matinee, I think, like a 2 p.m. game in Columbus. And because of all the fights, we had suspensions. So we played them the next day with 10 guys. That game went to overtime, and we won in overtime. Foxy might have scored the game winner there. And there was never a time when 10 people came together with the common goal, exhausted and so happy to get a win like that. So that was a good moment with a fun outcome in the next game as well.
We'll be back with the Reekin Havoc podcast.
In June of 2005, our twin girls were delivered, Melissa and Ann Catherine, and they were born 14 weeks early.
Amy and Chris George talk about the Melissa George Neonatal Memorial Fund.
They both weighed less than 2 pounds. Ann Catherine was 115 and Melissa was 1'9". Melissa lived for a couple of hours, but all of the medical technology in the world just could not have saved her, and she passed away while she was in the NICU. Chris realized pretty early that God had given us a platform that we could use to try to help people. So Chris and I started the Melissa George Neonatal Memorial Fund at Huntsville Hospital.
To know that Melissa's name is living on, her legacy continues, and I think that was very important to Amy and I, is why the fund is named after her. Because for 7 weeks, Melissa fought so that Aunt Catherine would have a chance to live. And I think that we wouldn't be doing her name any justice if we didn't carry on, because we know we wanted to honor her and honor her legacy. And the community, Huntsville Havoc, the community in Huntsville itself, they've rallied around that. And it's been a wonderful support system for us. And I think for a lot of families too, when they see total strangers that are giving.
We're online at HuntsvilleHospitalFoundation.org. Click on the Melissa George Neonatal Memorial Fund and you can give that way.
There's no donation that's too small, and every dollar is just as important as the next one. And if you're giving, then we understand you're giving because you care. And that's what's important, is that we've learned over the years that people give because they care.
And you can volunteer. If you're interested in that, you can click on the volunteer tab to fill out an application. We are grateful for any type of support, because we know that once we pull those dollars together, we can do big things.
For more information on the Melissa George Neonatal Memorial Fund, visit HuntsvilleHospitalFoundation.org.
I'm Nick Lazorko, and you're listening to the Reekin Havoc podcast.
Going back to last weekend, the Havoc were at home both games. Friday night was a 5-1 victory over the Macon Mayhem. Gio Procopio opened the scoring at 18:33 of the first, assisted by Benito Poza and brother Dominic Procopio. The second period saw 3 scores by Huntsville. Noah Finstrom, Doug Elgstam, and Charlie Risk teamed up on the power play at 6:55. Jack Yannick found the net at 14:07 with help from Connor Fries and Poza. Then again at 17:36 with the assist going to Robbie Fisher and Craig McCabe. A Macon goal at 10:50 helped them avoid the shutout. Charlie Risk and Dominic Procopio got together for an empty net score at 18:04. Brian Wilson was the winning goalie, saving 37 of 38 shots. The Havoc got hit for 16 penalty minutes. Yannick, Wilson, and Poza were the 3 stars of the game. Sunday afternoon's matchup was a 2-1 loss to Knoxville in a game that featured a lopsided ratio of penalty minutes, 21 assessed to the Havoc and only 4 to the Ice Bears. Huntsville's only point came at the 14:07 mark of the second period on a Doug Elgstam shot with help from McCabe and Risk. Mike Robinson went 27 of 29 in goal. Charlie Risk received a 1-game suspension for being an aggressor in the final 5 minutes of the game, getting a major penalty for fighting and a game misconduct. Goalie Brian Wilson was called up to the ECHL's Jacksonville Icemen following his performance on Friday. Dyson Skinner was signed in a corresponding move. Skinner comes from the University of Wisconsin River Falls and appeared in 3 games for the Carolina Thunderbirds of the FPHL. Former SPHL Rookie of the Year Austin Alger also signed with the Havoc. During the 2022-23 season, he put up 51 points in 54 games for Fayetteville before going to play in Europe, where he posted 41 points in 38 games. He split his time collegiately between Miami of Ohio and Canisius. Noah Finstrom currently leads Huntsville with 5 goals, while there is a 4-way tie for points between Finstrom, Jack Yannick, Gio Procopio, and Robbie Fisher. Cole Reginato tops the penalty minutes list with 43. This weekend's schedule includes a home and away game with 9th place Pensacola. All Havoc tickets are now digital and can be accessed through a mobile device. Go online to HuntsvilleHavoc.com and under the Tickets tab, click on Mobile Ticketing. Keep in mind, too, that the VBC is a cashless venue. Concession stands or bars will not accept cash, and Chuck-a-Puck purchase is only available online. Go to the Fan Zone tab at HuntsvilleHavoc.com and click on Auctions Powered by Dash. Be aware of the VBC's clear bag only policy for Havoc games. This includes no clutch purses, fanny packs, and diaper bags. Exceptions to the policy will be made for all medically necessary items after proper inspection. For more information, plus a list of prohibited items, go to HuntsvilleHavoc.com and under the Fan Zone tab, click Security. Remember, if you're a season ticket holder, doors will open at 5:30 p.m. and remain open until puck drop. You can enter through the doors in the hallway adjacent to the Havoc front office and VBC box office.
Join the Huntsville Havoc Booster Club and help support the team and staff and promote the sport of hockey in Huntsville. Go online to havocboosters.org for more information.
The Reekin Havoc Podcast.
For those returning from military service, the transition back to civilian life isn't always easy. Retired Marine Gunnery Sergeant Bill Cook talks about still serving veterans.
The mission of Still Serving Veterans is to serve and honor veterans and their families by empowering them to build meaningful lives. And we do that through connecting to fulfilling careers, getting the benefits they deserve, or the services that they need. We have never charged anybody anything for our services. A group of business leaders in town felt there was a need to help the seriously wounded make that transition back into civilian life. Employment services, VA benefits, and connections to other community services. That's what we do. If you're a veteran and you need help, please get a hold of us. Go to that website, ssv.org, and you can find out pretty much anything you need to know about still serving veterans.
In Huntsville, call 256-883-7035.
For tickets, official Huntsville Havoc merchandise, and more, go to HuntsvilleHavoc.com. Visit our website at ReekinHavoc.com. Look for us on Facebook, Instagram, X, and Threads. And listen, follow, and subscribe to the Reekin Havoc podcast on your favorite platform to keep up with the only weekly podcast covering the Huntsville Havoc, the Reekin Havoc podcast.